Welcome to this video. This is round 4 of the Norway chess super tournament, and just like in the first 3 coverages, I'm going to present 4 games quickly, 1 game in more detail. Let's get right into the thick of things. The first game I'm going to show briefly is Agtestein against Kramnik. And let's see what happened here. Agtestein with a very good start, 3 draws for his rating in this tournament, being the clear outsider. 3 draws are very good. And we got a Nimzo. Agtestein is playing d4 here in this tournament. He also plays 1 e4, as I could witness in the tournament on Mallorca, this open tournament that I had played earlier in May, about 1 month ago. Agtestein was a participant. It's quite funny to see him switching from from my tournament, so to say, to the super tournament. Okay, and back then he also played e4, but here we got a Nimzo, and Kramnik is playing what he usually does, the so-called Karpov variation with the double trade in the center and b6. Yeah, you could argue maybe a somewhat more complicated line would have been more appropriate to maybe try to play for a win. Yeah, he's playing his normal stuff, so to say, and tries to go from there, not doing anything crazy. Yeah, here he played the move h6, which is a very rare move. Normally, black allows a possible pin here on bishop g5. This square he leaves open. Black is playing stuff like knight d7, bishop e7, those kind of moves. It's a multitude of possibilities. h6 is interesting though. It keeps, as mentioned, a bishop from g5. Agtestein is playing bishop b3 after some sort. This is a good prophylactic move. It withdraws the bishop from a possible attack by the queen. Let's say queen c7 can be a move at a later stage. And it also allows the c-pawn to move. What c-pawn? Yeah, this c-pawn. If black chooses to take at some point, c4 is possible. So it's a good move. And now Kramnik played knight c6. Yeah, the drawback of all this is from a practical point of view. I mean, black is probably okay here. His idea is to play knight e7. This is the whole point of the h6 plan. Knight e7 and maybe then centralize the knight. Pretty nice positional idea. The drawback, as I started to say, from a practical point of view, is the move d5. This is played by Agtestein, and after that we get to a position where black has absolutely no winning chances. He needs to trade, and here with those kind of ideas on the queen f6 is forced. Yeah, now we have a completely open center. C, D and E file are open, and it leads to this position where you can already see that on the D file there is huge pressure by all rooks. And it's interesting, after h3 I should show a funny little detail. This move, which looks quite nice, is fading to rook d5. Should avoid that. And okay, well, we had this, and here Kramnik started a funny operation, which ultimately didn't lead to anything, but it was interesting. He gave the exchange here temporarily, and now followed up with knight e5. Really funny line. Yeah, here after knight e5, bishop d5, black has got the bishop pair, and yeah, there is no big choice. White needs to take, bishop takes, and now queen takes. Yeah, the rook on e5 is hanging. If white tries this fancy move, there is queen g5. This is quite neat. Yeah, rook g5, bishop e2, and black is yeah, probably winning in the long run with 2 bishops against the rook. Okay, queen f3, and queen e5. Yeah, and what's the result of all this? Total equality. Black has slightly the more active position with the queen on e5.
Check.
But frankly speaking, if white plays precisely, there never should happen anything. He chose a trade A against f pawn and now went for counterplay with f4 against the king, and it was just in time in a way.
Check.
Yeah, at the end we
check.
Got this sort of perpetual and draw agreed. Also, black can, of course, all the time, like here, just take here, queen a3, and it's totally dead. Yeah, it's just not a very suitable position right out of the opening to play for winless black. But Kramnik is very principled in this way. He does not play anything too risky or what he considers to be unsound. Still, I would sometimes wonder why not, just for argument's sake. I mean, I'm playing this in Blitz often, and I'm writing this book. Yeah, why not? Maybe let's try the Hübner variation. Go for a complicated battle. I don't know. It's not totally unsound or anything, and it keeps pieces on the board. But okay, he has his own idea what to do, and he's fared very well with it, obviously. Okay, next game I'm going to look at is Topalov Carlsen, and let's see what the world champion is doing. We have a Nimzo, but after knight f3 we transpose into the Rogozin variation of the Queen's Gambit, a line that Carlsen has played for a number of years. This line is chosen, and now h6, bishop h4. Yeah, this invites a very sharp battle if black wants, with g5, bishop g3, knight e4. However, this is also a risky business. Yeah, at first it looks really nice because there's a double threat on c3 and h5 and so on. But knight d2 is quite good for white. Yeah, there is also the c5 play, and Topalov now took on c5. This is not a very common approach. Very often white just plays e3, this very normal looking move. Then bishop out or to e2, yeah, and castling. This is somewhat more, a more complicated battle. Yeah, we had a quick play by black here on this diagonal, and it was answered by knight to d2, blocking this diagonal, the a5 to e1 diagonal. Yeah, black chose to damage the pawn structure a bit and then recapture on c5. Yeah, if we continue these moves for a couple of moves, we get to a fairly typical position of the Rogozin. Very often black needs to give up the bishop on b4 and get some sort of compensation for that, like here the slightly awkward pawn structure on the queen side. However, on the other hand, white has got two bishops, black has got some dark squared weaknesses, as it is very often if you have given up your dark squared bishop. And well, you're not very well developed. Yeah, the bishop on c8 especially is not great, and you cannot easily, let's say, play knight b6 and get the bishop out, as there's always bishop f6 happening, damaging your pawn structure. So black's play should be very concrete, and he played queen a3. This is, I guess, a good move. It attacks on a2 and still looks at the pawn on c3. Yeah, if white now plays a passive move, black will probably play b6, bishop a6. Let's say a move like that. There is b6, castles, bishop a6, and black has managed to very nicely get rid of his bad bishop. So Topalov just ignores all this and he gives up the a2 pawn. Yeah, and black really does not have much else. Carlsen also decided to take it. If you don't take it, where's your big compensation for all the queen moves and the bad development? So he took the pawn, and now c4 was played. A very logical continuation. White wants to open up the position as as much as possible, and wants to get play for his bishops. Yeah, knight e4, probably the best move. It looks a bit counterintuitive to move the same piece again when you're behind, but it's just for concrete reasons, I guess, the best move. It attacks the knight on d2, and it invites this structural change, which is hard to avoid. We can only argue that white maybe can play rook c2, queen a5, and only then take. But in general, we have this this capture which will happen. Yeah, and now at least the pawn structure has lost some dynamism. Sorry. And the knights are gone, which is very helpful. If you just for argument's sake think of this, this looks terrible. And with knight e4, black managed to get rid of the knights. So we come to this position, and here, around here, it is quite clear that white has very nice compensation for the pawn, but it's not so clear how he really should continue to try to make something substantial out of it, as black's position is still very solid. He has no real pawn weakness to attack, or let's say a weak king position, or anything that is directly a subject of attack. The only thing is black's queen is of course always a bit under fire, but as long as it is not able to trap it, not a big problem. Yeah, c5 was played, trying to cover the bishop, to improve the position here, and also get the bishop here out to one of those more active squares if possible. b5 is covered at the moment by the queen on b2. Yeah, and now we see a fairly typical play by Carlsen. a5. I mean, not typical of his play, but a very typical way to play in general. If you have this extra a pawn, it's very often an idea to just push it right now, to also get your rook into play. Yeah, this way you really don't worry so much about your bishop being developed, as you think that, okay, I need to get the bishop out, yeah, and rook to d8 and stuff. This is not necessary. Here on a1, or sorry, on a8, of course, the rook is just nicely placed because it supports the a pawn, and therefore you develop your rook by pushing the a pawn in a way, right? You don't need to classically always put it in the middle of the board. Of course, very often centralization is the way to go, but here the rook has a useful role. Yeah, and it seems that right here in this position, Topalov really does not have anything better than what he did. And what he did is not very exciting for the spectator. But you know, both Topalov and Carlsen, we see now, after this, yeah, Carlsen went back, and now Topalov played this sort of perpetual on the rook. And here they drew the game, which is yeah, not very exciting, as mentioned, for the spectator. But it seems that there is really no a big way forward for white. And knowing both players, they are both probably the most fighting players around. I mean, Carlsen really only draws if he absolutely needs to. And Topalov is pretty much the same. He very often actually, sometimes it seems he prefers to lose than to draw, the way he plays sometimes. So you cannot really call those guys like boring or anything. It's simply like there is no big alternative. If we look at this, for example, what should white do? Yeah, you can try to develop an initiative in other ways, but black always has counterplay. If we just a sample line, this is not forced, yeah. And yeah, what should white do now? Let's say go here, keep all the pressure, maybe go here. Yeah, black will push the a pawn. I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe Topalov could have continued, but it's somewhat risky. I don't know. Maybe in other situations when he was feeling, I don't know, in the right mood, he probably would have continued. I mean, Carlsen couldn't do anything. He was just in this perpetual. Maybe Topalov could have tried, but it's unclear to me how risky this would have been. I mean, the a-pawn is dangerous. So a draw in this game, not too exciting for Carlsen, 4 draws. But as he stated in the press conference, he only had played one bad game, the game against Caruana, where he was very much better, spoiled this, and at the end was was not lucky to make a draw, but he was sort of groveling for a draw. So not great his tournament so far for his standards, of course. Okay, so next game. What is the next game actually? Aronian Svidler. Yeah, let's have a look here, and this will be relatively brief. It was a long line here of the Grunfeld with
check,
Rook b1. Both players have played this several times, so it could have been expected. Also, Rook b7 has been played a lot, and it seems that we follow a game for a rather long time, and all this seems to be known. Svidler mentioned in the press conference that that was all very much known line. Aronian was also playing this very quickly. Yeah, it is mysterious because yeah, well, yeah, look, he played all this super quickly, and the resulting position is just totally equal. I'm really not sure what he had prepared, and it was a quite funny press conference when Aronian was not really answering the question why was he going for that when there is nothing. It was a bit weird, and yeah, now after this we see that Black was indeed slightly uncomfortable because he got the pawn on e4, which is not ideal, but he just set up a position where it always defended twice, and there is really not much that white can try. They played for a bit, yeah, but Aronian was playing very quickly.
Check, check.
Yeah, here they just went to a rook endgame. Aronian didn't even bother to take. Yeah, I mean, this is a rook endgame, a pawn up after h5. Of course, it's quite dead. Yeah, there's no winning chances. I'm pretty amazed that an engine like Stockfish was supposed to be really good. Yeah, gives this as clearly better for white. This is of course a total joke. So somewhat strange evaluation. Yeah, well, okay, this is not even what Aronian played. He played g4, and it's pretty much nothing going on. It's you can try king f4, but after this you will get the f pawn as trade-off for the e4 pawn. So very unexciting game, and somewhat mysterious what Aronian was doing there. Pretty much blitzing out some preparation which leads to a draw as white. Okay, it seemed to me like that. The press conference, as mentioned, was rather obscure. Okay, so Caruana Giri. Caruana, the tournament leader with 2.5 out of 3, and Giri slightly struggling after he lost to Kramnik. Let's see. Caruana slightly surprisingly plays c4. He's primarily an e4 player nowadays, not mixing it up so much, but okay, here he wants to obviously show that, okay, it's not going to be e4 all the time. You also need to prepare for something else against me. Okay, we have this kind of reversed dragon, and interestingly enough, he plays it with bishop e3, which is the old traditional way to play it. In recent years, it mostly was all b4. I think this was also played in the earlier game in this tournament between Svidler and Kramnik. Yeah, well, bishop e3. This is very much like it is played in the dragon as well, in the e4 c5 dragon with bishop e2, the classical variation. Very often the bishop ends up here and tries to exchange itself here, and then afterwards play on the c file. Giri, however, decided to take on c5 and now put the knight on d5. I think this is a fairly normal position from this opening, or if you imagine this being a Sicilian, like colors reversed, it also looks fairly normal. Only after the next two moves it gets somewhat intergearing. g5 is played. Yeah, and this is really the, in a way, most important move of the game, because yeah, well, Giri accepts that his whole king side position here, in the king side, is weakened. In order, as a compensation, what I was trying to say is he gains some time and space, but it's not really clear if in the long run this is such a great decision. We will see that that later. Yeah, this was a typical way to play. With e4 here, white fights for the e4 square and gets it here for the bishop. Around here, it to me at least, it was looking that like that Giri is slowly being pushed back as some pieces were traded, and he made some progress here. Caruana did in the center. Yeah, now there is c5 as a possible entry square.
Check.
And around here I thought, oh wow, this is probably going to be yet another win for the young player from Brooklyn. He is originally, I think, isn't he, from New York? Now playing for Italy. Yeah, knight f5. I really thought that this should be very nice for white now. The king position is getting more and more of a problem, and d4 is also weak. It looks very tough to defend for black. Around here is an interesting point. It seems that in this position knight takes e7 was an interesting move. It's not a very intuitive move to exchange, but it seems to be very good for concrete reasons. If you look at this, queen b4 just attacks the rook. And what should it do? It's not easy, because there's also this f5 square, f8 square for white checks. For example, if he goes rook f7, if you look at this,
check.
This is a very funny position where black is very close to falling in a Zugzwang. You cannot move the bishop, cannot move the king, you cannot move the pawn, and the queen always must, in a way, make sure that the d pawn is protected, and it also must it must protect this diagonal so that queen f6 checkmate is not coming. Yeah, really need to visualize this. If black plays, oh, this is really stupid, yeah, but just to show it.
Checkmate.
That's a mate. Yeah, and this is a very difficult position for black. There are even funny ideas if we just put some more moves on the board. Let's say black plays queen e6 here, yeah. Then white has the funny move. Does it have it here? Does he have it here? I was thinking about this. Yeah, I think it's possible. Was briefly afraid that there might be a perpetual, but there isn't. Yeah, this is a funny move based again on this
checkmate.
On this checkmate trick, and here it is very close that black is running out of moves. Very often white can also take and at the end win d4 with a check. Yeah, just a possible line. Knight takes e7 was probably interesting. It is the move recommended by Houdini. A computer gives it as almost a win for white. I'm not totally sure if it should be winning, but it looks very promising. Knight h4, however, with the intention to go to f3 also looked nice, at least for the human eye. Queen c5, and now queen f2 was played. Yeah, here also white has some interesting alternatives. One being the check on f8, with the idea to drop back to f1, now intending queen f1, queen f2, f8, like, yeah, infiltrating with the queen, not with the rook. What he did was he put the queen behind the rook, and this does not seem to be as promising. Maybe rook f8, or playing here. Maybe rook f8 was the stronger move, or rook f6. Not quite sure. But it looks more promising than queen f2. After this,
check.
Well, this was too quick. After this, it's not so clear how white should continue. Maybe should somehow, yeah, regroup here to get again the queen in front of the rook. What is clear though, I mean, white should always be somewhat better, even if he plays a somewhat nothing move, like, I don't know, queen somewhere, f1, fe2, just keep the position as is. White should always be somewhat better because of the bad black king position. This is really a consequence of this g5 move, and is a very clear illustration why you should always consider carefully those kind of moves. They really can hit you at the end. Yeah, Caruana ever played knight f5, and this is based on some miscalculation, as after this it's really a total draw. They traded all off, and here queen e3 was played. Queen c6 was also a draw. Yeah, and here they continued for a bit, but here simply there is not enough firepower to do anything against the king, and this is all very precise. Queen e2 was the threat.
Check.
And here there are only some checks
check.
happening, and here they agree to a draw because it's a perpetual by one side. Yeah, white can give it, black can give it. It is a draw. Yeah, maybe there were some chances for Caruana around the time control. Knight takes e7, and maybe later instead of knight f5 or here rook f8, there were some chances, but he didn't make the most of it this time. Okay, so still an interesting game, and now let's go for the game of the day. It is Karjakin Grischuk, and this was a really funny game, or an up and down game. I don't know if funny is the right way to call it. We had Grunfeld again, somewhat different line to Aronian Svidler, the bishop e3 rook c1 line, a line that is quite often associated with Anatoly Karpov, who made very good use of it in his World Championship matches. I think he played it in 1990, that's clear, in the New York Lyon match. Did he also play it in 87? Maybe, not quite sure. But it was very often played by Karpov, and with good success. Quite often they got this type of ending, yeah, with c takes and so on. But black has other ideas. He can also play it with, let's say, with more pieces on the board. You don't necessarily need to trade down to an ending. Bishop g4 is an interesting line, now answered with knight g5. This is also an idea of Karpov's. The idea being that you play h3, push the bishop back, and then return to f3. It just avoids any trades. After h6 there's also h3. h6 is really a bad move. Okay, knight a6 was played. Dropping back here. And rook c8. Yeah, the knight is not badly placed on a6. it makes sure that the C file is open for counterplay, and it can sometimes get into play on B4 or C5 according to circumstances. D5 was played, C4, bishop B1. We see that Karjakin already has spent lots of time here, despite the fact that we're still in a known position. It's not a total main line, but still a known position. But note that Karjakin is not a regular D4 player. Normally he's an E4 player who sometimes, for the sake of not being too predictable, plays D4, C4, knight F3. Yeah, but this is like 1 out of 10 games. I didn't look up the statistics, but he's really not often doing anything else than the king pawn. Yeah, so maybe he needed to find things over the board. Yeah, knight C5 was played. Makes sense, huh? After C4, bishop D4, bishop D4, and now Karjakin, after some hesitation, took on D4. That's an interesting position, really, after C takes D4. And if you want, you can pause the video here and find the best continuation for black. It's there is a tactical sequence, and it's probably not so difficult, but it's still funny to try to find it yourself. Black to move and to find a nice sequence. Yeah, I'm going to tell it now. Yeah, okay. The thing is, it's clearly about this sort of pinning situation. Must be something like that. And in fact, black has a funny tactical trick. He played C3 here. Yeah, after quickly, really. I mean, it was planned, and what else is there? And now what happens? Okay, fine. Let's start. Queen takes.
Check.
Is a total disaster. Yeah, losing the queen, so cannot do that. Moving the queen.
Check.
Nope. So at the end, white must take with the rook. Yeah, now what's the big point? The point is
check.
This check. It's quite nice, yeah. It's giving a check on a square that is protected 3 times. And all 3 captures are legal. But okay, some are easily dismissed. Queen takes, rook takes, obviously is easy. Bishop takes, rook takes is also just an exchange for nothing. So it must be played to take with the rook.
Check.
And rook c1. That's the big point. Using this this pin here. King e2, only move.
Check.
Trading, and rook takes h1. So with this sequence, black has won the exchange for a pawn. Has Karjakin just blundered this? Maybe, maybe, but maybe he also was thinking that he has some compensation. Rook b3 was played, and I believe that right here in this position, very quickly after the sacrifice, we get to a critical situation. At least it is my feeling that this is a critical situation. Grischuk now played the move b5 after some hesitation. It's always a tough decision moving your pawns, because, well, they cannot go back. You really commit yourself with a pawn move. There is there is no such thing as a non-committal pawn move. Yeah, and why is b5 an interesting decision or a debatable decision? It is somewhat debatable because it weakens the c5 square and the whole queen side in general, mostly c5. This is the main point. When there was the press conference with Svidler and Aronian, at the time they had a look at this game, and they both stated that they would prefer to play b6 in this position. And having looked at this a bit myself, also supported by Mr. Houdini, I pretty much agree. b6 seems to be the better choice. The main point being, well, you only move the pawn because it's hanging, yeah? And you need to attend to this simple threat. b6 is covering c5. It is not allowing a piece to come to c5 quickly. And it just seems to be the better setup. I mean, black really should be better in this position. It's just a question of how much. And in the game after b5, I think relatively quickly, white gets pretty substantial compensation. Even if the engine is only giving it as, I don't know, a slight edge for black, I think that in a practical game, white's position pretty quickly gets quite interesting. f6 was played to cover those squares, especially knight e5. And now knight e1. Here we see one point. Yeah, the knight suddenly has an idea where to go. Just imagine this position with b6 and this idea would be non-existent. a5 and rook c3. And here we see the next point. The knight to e1 also cut off the rook on h1. So at the moment the rook is not doing that much. And white's rook has two ideas. It can go to c5, it can go to c7. After rook c8, white had this move, which never would have been available with the pawn on b6. Yeah, and here it is already a bit difficult for black. Not difficult in the sense of that he's worse, but difficult in the sense of playing the position. What exactly are you doing? Well, taking on c5 you really don't want to do, giving white this passer on the c file and improving the pawn structure. Grischuk decided to push his pawns, and yeah, like that. And we get to the point where, if you look at it with an engine, it falls down to a 0 evaluation, probably because if we look at what happened, this pawn, this b pawn, probably has enough power to allow black to free the rook here and to get to a position which is probably drawn. We see this a bit later. White is entering here on the 7th and rook d8. Yeah, he's just somewhat passively protecting the bishop. This wasn't the only approach though. Black here also could have played b2, which probably would have secured a draw immediately. But of course, I think black was still trying to do something. Yeah, this is the drawing idea. After, for example, rook b7, rook takes,
check, check,
and this really should be a draw. Yeah, it's very. I mean, it's not easy at all to get out of the checks. White can do that, but black's rooks are active, and I don't really see a way forward here. White has no pass pawn here. He's got two pawns for the exchange. That's not so bad, but it's not apparent how he should make any progress. This was an alternative, but rook d8 was the more fighting choice. b7. And now rook a8. Now he returns to a8, or he goes to a8 with a similar idea, and it happened.
check,
Yeah, he got the e1 piece as a trade for the b pawn. So we have a similar situation like the one I showed before, but here the king is on b3, and black is not as well coordinated. It still should be a draw, but it's not easy. Rook f2, rook e7, this pawn was taken. And now this is a passer, right? It is dangerous and pretty much demands very accurate play. Rook e3, c4, rook d2. This all seems to be perfectly okay, but it's already tricky. If we, for example, if black wants to take, the d pawn is already decisive. This is too quick. the move played in the game. Rook d2 was fine. Bishop b1, there's really no other decent square. And exactly here, in this position where Grischuk was in severe time trouble, we see that the ICC clock is really screwing up here, so showing a minus figure. Here in already serious time trouble, Grischuk is making a mistake. It's super easy to do, and this is really the problem of this way of playing. The way he played is it's sort of a position where white is much easier to play, as you have the active possibilities here with your d pawn, the active rook, and black must defend very carefully and sort of walking a tightrope to avoid defeat. Yeah, what he played, it looks totally normal, really. Rook b2 attacking the bishop, but it seems that this move is really losing. Instead, the other attack, rook e1, was better. It is also very tricky though. If we look, for example, after d6, which looks very dangerous, the move rook e d1 is the one that is drawing, and it's not easy to see. King c5, yeah, and exactly here, black can take. Note that this is not possible.
Check.
White is winning like that. But here he can take, and after d7,
check.
rook c2.
Check.
This is a funny perpetual on those squares. It's very, very difficult to calculate all this in any case, and if you have little time, it's pretty much impossible. He played rook b2, and what's the big difference? Now d6 is coming much quicker. There is no perpetual idea in this configuration. Black cannot take. This is just promoting. Played king f8, and now bishop d3 was played. It seems that here even rook takes h7 was good, and even stronger than bishop b3, but this was not easy to spot. It's relatively easy to see that this is a win, as rook h8 and d8 queen cannot be prevented. Yeah, well, black can do this, but
check.
This is quite obviously winning for white, with him attacking the rooks and having the passer here, or the pass pawns. The f pawn is very difficult to keep. King can also enter on e6. Rook h7. Let's check again. King e8 is a possibility. The bishop here is still without, does not have any square, so this is interesting as well. And yeah, here it's interesting that right here you can drop to d3 and just have snatched the h pawn in the process. Yeah, rook h7 was somewhat stronger, but okay, well, in this time it is very, very difficult to play. Rook d2 and bishop f1. This is a strong move. Rook takes h7 is not enough. It looks interesting at first, like that.
Check.
It's quite funny actually. d5. But it is still a draw. Even this is a draw.
Check. Check.
And black will stop the d pawn. No, can even take here. This is no way to win. Many checking possibilities as well. Yeah, bishop f1 is strong, and it still should be very close to a win for white. Rook h7, as mentioned, was a bit better, but it's still probably winning. Rook a3 was played, and yeah, what else is there? You can go to e1, but there is king c3. This was a very important move to foresee. Rook dd1 and bishop b5, and finally the white bishop is getting into the play. I don't really, I cannot really analyze this to a total conclusion. I can give you a sample line that looks fairly logical. Rook cd1, really? Rook ed1. And now something like d5 is quite strong. White at the end will get the pawn going.
Check, check, check.
Yeah, and after this, at the end, this bishop will switch to this important square on e6. h7 will probably fall. It's a very good position, very close to a win. Probably it is winning, but it's hard to determine absolutely surely. But from a practical point of view, this is not defensible in any case. White just has a much better play, and here probably it is really also winning from a mathematical point of view. Let's call it like that. Sorry, d7 and king c5. That's very important, of course, threatening to set up a mating attack with king d6, which pretty much forces black to play king c7. And now finally white took the h-pawn. Yeah, black has no defense anymore. We can continue for a couple of moves. dg5. Yeah, what happens if black goes to this goes to c2 to set up the pin? This is the problem. And white has a overwhelming position, combining mating attacks with the attacks on the pawns and the passers. For example, like this.
Check.
Yeah, and white is coming to the weak pawns. Yeah, white is completely winning here. There's simply no defense. Yeah, g5 was played. And here we have a similar situation. White sacrifices his passer to break through.
Check.
This was played in the game, and here Grischuk resigned. Yeah, certainly a somewhat frustrating game after the start, when he had just won an exchange, but it turned out to be a fairly tricky position. And in my point of view is that after b5 it is tricky for black. Not bad for black, but it's very tricky to play. I think probably with b6 it was possible to really establish an advantage. After b5, only a couple of moves later, I really don't think that black has anything. Even if the computer gives him a slight edge, it's somewhat hovering between equal and I don't know, 0.4 for black. But what does this really mean? The thing is, white is just much easier to play, and it's not so clear that the engine is evaluating this correctly. Note that the black rook here is not doing very much. It's really incarcerated here, and the play happening on the queen side is not in any way supported by the rook. So maybe it really is just equal here, around here, but equal in a way that still demands super precise play, especially from the black side. And with little time, Grischuk couldn't do it really. So a win for Karjakin and a loss for Grischuk, who's on 50% now. So he's got the same score as Carlsen and Atkestein with all the draws, but he has got no draw, 2 wins and 2 losses. Yeah, okay, this was the 4th round of this tournament. Not a super exciting round, I must admit. Many draws with somewhat, I don't know, not so much action, but still some interesting points to watch. Yeah, I hope you will be back tomorrow to watch the round 5 coverage. I'll be back, and thanks for watching.